Hi, and welcome to the Rancher Mike YouTube channel. If this is your first time visiting, thanks so much for joining me today. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you for your support. If you're not already subscribed and you enjoy the content of this video, I hope you'll consider doing so and also hitting the notification bell below to be informed of new content when I release new videos. Today I'm going to be discussing a topic that gets a lot of comments and questions on YouTube, and that is my mealworm colony, which you see behind me. One of the questions I get more often than not is how to deal with the pupa and beetles in your mealworm colony. Now, for those of you who are not mealworm farmers, you're probably scratching your head right now and wondering, what do pupa and beetles have to do with worms? Well, for starters, mealworms are not worms at all. They're actually the larval or immature stage of the darkling beetle. Darkling beetles will mate and lay eggs, and when those eggs hatch, they hatch into very tiny little mealworms. And as those mealworms grow, they will shed their skin and come out of that molting a little bit bigger. They will go through several of those moltings, about 15. Those moltings are called instars. And after they get to the 15th instar, they are about 1.5 inches long and are at a good size for harvesting to feed to pets like lizards and chickens as an extra source of protein. However, new mealworm farmers will quickly realize that if they don't harvest all of the mature mealworms in their colony, one day they will go to their bin and find that there are beetles walking around. What has happened is that the mealworm has gone through another metamorphosis from the larval stage into the darkling beetle stage through what is called the pupa stage. And so new mealworm farmers are faced with the situation of what to do with all those pupa and beetles. Do you take them out of the mealworm bin? Do you leave them in there? How long? When should you transfer them? How do you transfer them? So today I thought I would give you a brief rundown of what I do to make sure that my pupa can develop without stress or damage, and also the eggs that my beetles are laying can develop into mealworms without predation by the beetles, to make sure that I maximize the overall efficiency of my mealworm colony. The first thing you'll notice is that I have a rack system that many of you have seen before if you've watched any of my YouTube videos. My rack system is made out of aluminum, and it has 3 columns and 10 rows of trays. Now you can see that some of these trays are labeled at the moment and others are not. The ones that are labeled are the ones that I am currently growing out. I had to restart my colony recently because I had moved over to red wigglers, but I have since realized that I want to move back into mealworms again. I just really have enjoyed raising mealworms, and so I restarted my colonies recently. What I do for my system is I label everything. So whenever something comes in, I label it, and if something moves out, I label it as well. I use this device that I purchased on Amazon. It is a labeler that you can buy. There's several different models. This one, I believe, is an Epson LW400. I'll put a link to this in my Amazon storefront that you can find at the bottom of the video here and also at the bottom of my other videos as well. I use this labeler to create these labels that you see here. The way my system works, I start off at the top with the original mealworms, in this case the original lot that I bought from somebody on Amazon as well, and I give it a label. So my labeling system says M-in and the date. So that means mealworms were in on January 4, 2021. This here is a second lot of mealworms that I bought off of Amazon, and this lot you can see is labeled second lot, and these mealworms came in more recently at the beginning of March. The reason that I like to start a couple of different colonies is that I like to have genetic differentiation in my mealworms as they're developing. It also is helpful if, for example, I bought a lot that as it starts to develop, I see that it has problems. Maybe the quantity or quality of the beetles is not up to my standards. I can terminate that line, and I still have another line that is hopefully from another manufacturer or just another lot of mealworms, and maybe that lot will do better. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering why I don't just leave everything in the initial bin. Why not just leave all of the same mealworms and let them turn into pupa and beetles and let those beetles lay eggs all in the same bin? The problem is that if you do that, you will have mealworms at different stages of their life cycle in that bin. It'll be difficult to separate the mealworms. You'll go to try and sift your frass, and the frass will have eggs attached to it that you won't be aware of until you find that your frass bucket has little tiny mealworms crawling around in it, and it'll just become a huge mess. Now, if that happens, I have another video that you can watch, and you can click the link above to check it out. That tells you how to clean up those bins if you do run into that situation. So click the link above if you want to watch that. One thing I didn't mention in that video that I want to point out now is if you do sift your frass out of a bin that has beetles running around, make sure that you put that frass in the freezer for a while so that you can kill off any eggs that may be attached to the frass. Now I'm going to show you what one of my bins looks like when I have both pupa and beetles in the bin at the same time. The first thing you'll notice is that I have this structure on top with pupa by themselves. And the reason that I do this is I want to have the pupa separated from the beetles in the bin so that they can develop without stress or damage, because beetles are known to start attacking pupa when they run out of their source of moisture. And that will, of course, reduce the efficiency of your mealworm colony. So I have this structure. It is made out of stainless steel. It has some gaps on the sides so that the beetles can go underneath and get in the dark area, which they like. But if you don't have somebody that can weld for you, it's very easy to go and buy either like a plastic tub or something else that's similar, and you could cut it down. You could even carve holes on the sides, and you could put that in your bin and serve the same purpose. I wanted to show you kind of the different stages that the beetle will take once it emerges from the pupa stage. When they first emerge, they'll be very light colored, just like this. And as they grow, they will turn a little darker red, and ultimately they will turn dark brown, or in most cases, all black. It takes about 6 to 18 days for the beetles to come out of the pupa stage once they enter into it, and it takes about 9 to 20 days later for those beetles to start laying eggs. So whenever you have your bin set up like this, it's very easy to monitor how your pupa are doing and how they're coming along in terms of turning into beetles. And you can also monitor your beetles to see how many of them are in that mature or dark colored stage. And once you see that the majority of your bin is dark beetles, then you can start to calculate how long it would take before you need to move those beetles. I calculate about 2 weeks after that before I go to move them to the next bin. Now, if you follow this procedure, you're going to have necessarily some beetles in here that are not mature, they're still developing, especially if you still have pupa on top or you're continuing to add to those pupa from your mealworm bin as those are developing. You're going to continue to have some beetles that are not actually laying eggs in the bin that you use for your beetles, but that's okay, because the mature beetles, of course, will only live for about 2 to 3 months, and as they start dying off, the ones that are becoming mature will take over their place and be continuing to lay eggs, and so you will have no problem. You're only going to be adding to the eggs that are in your bin, and as long as you move things every couple of weeks, you can avoid the situation where the beetles start to attack the eggs that they're laying, and of course they won't be able to attack the pupa either, because the pupa will be elevated from the base of the bin. So now you can see why I have 10 rows. If this is row number 1, this is the original lot of mealworms that I got. Row number 2 is when I let the pupa stay in until they fully matured as a first round of beetles, and that was about a month and 5 days. Let's call bin number 3 like the first row for when the beetles are going to be moved every 2 weeks. So if this is 2 weeks, then this is row 4, that's 4 weeks, so that's 1 month. And then rows 5 and 6 would be 2 months. And then 7 and 8 would be 3 months. And then I have 2 more rows at the bottom, just in case I have overflow. And the way that I have it designed, as I've already explained, since I'm moving the pupa tray along with each of these bins, there are going to be additional beetles developing over the course of the next few weeks that are immature for a while until they become mature, and the older beetles will be dying off and the newer beetles will be replacing them. So I have a couple of rows of overflow at the bottom for the system in which I'm going to have additional beetles there producing eggs. But the hope is that the way that this is structured, I should have liberated some of these trays at the top, and so I can put some of the beetles back in the top and keep going through. And as these are going, I will have bins with mature mealworms, bins with a little bit newer mealworms, and then bins with beetles producing additional eggs. and I should be able to stay in one column with one line of mealworms. And if for some reason I run into a bottleneck, let's say that I've got beetles that aren't dying off like I thought they would, and I still have beetles producing and they're going to start running into my mealworm trays, I have this column 3 liberated for that overflow from either column 1 or column 2, so that I can make sure that I have extra space available. And as long as I am labeling everything as I go along the way, I should never get confused as to when it's time to move something to the next row, because again, everything starts off at the top and moves to the subsequent rows as so. So there you have it. That's my strategy for moving pupa and beetles in my mealworm colony. It's really worked well for me, so I hope that it works for you too. And stay tuned for my next video, in which I will actually move beetles from one bin to another, show you my process for doing that makes it super easy and super simple. It also allows me to get rid of the dead beetles at the same time, so that I'm left with just live beetles in the new bin. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. If so, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel at Rancher Mike. And until next time, take care.